Welcome to Craving the Heat, where desire takes the lead and every story leaves you wanting more. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments and keep up with our latest naughty stories. It began on an ordinary spring afternoon, the kind of day where the sunlight spills over the street in golden pools and the air smells faintly of blooming jasmine. I was tending to my small garden, trying to coax life from stubborn soil, when the moving truck pulled up across the street. Boxes were stacked neatly on the curb, the sound of wheels on asphalt mixing with the soft chatter of movers. That's when I first saw her, Elena, lifting a box with a kind of quiet determination that caught my attention immediately. She had an air about her that suggested resilience. Someone who had weathered storms, I could only guess at Dot over the next few days. I caught glimpses of her settling in, curtains hung with careful precision, furniture arranged just so, a dog trotting after her in lazy circles. She was polite, nodding and smiling as our paths crossed at the mailbox or along the sidewalk. Yet there was a subtle sadness in her eyes, the kind that speaks of fresh heartbreak. I learned from casual conversation with neighbors or passing remarks that she had recently divorced, leaving behind not just a marriage, but a life she had built with someone else. There was an invisible weight she carried, and though she tried to mask it with routine, I could sense it lurking beneath. I started offering small gestures, helping her carry heavy boxes, lending tools from my garage, sharing tips about local cafes and grocery stores. What began as neighborly politeness slowly evolved into longer conversations, first at the fence dividing our yards, then on the porch over cups of coffee in the morning light. There was laughter, quiet confessions, and moments of shared silence that spoke louder than words. I found myself drawn to her not just for her beauty, but for the way she seemed to understand the quiet struggles of life, for the way her laughter could pierce the lingering gloom she carried with her. Weeks passed, and our interactions deepened. We started sharing meals when our schedules aligned, casually at first, a pizza one evening, pasta another, but gradually our proximity grew more intimate. One night, after helping her carry groceries inside, our hands brushed as we reached for the same bag. It was fleeting, yet electric, a spark neither of us could ignore. I told myself it was nothing, a mere accident, but I saw the same hesitation, the same curiosity in her eyes. It was the beginning of a line neither of us knew if we should cross. Her divorce story surfaced in bits and pieces. Late nights where she confessed frustrations over broken trust, moments of vulnerability that hinted at the pain she had endured. I listened, offering comfort without judgment, my presence a quiet refuge. There was a magnetism between us, a pull that grew stronger with each shared smile, each fleeting touch, each lingering glance. The line between neighborly concern and something more began to blur, subtle at first, then impossible to deny. One rainy evening, she invited me inside under the pretense of sharing tea. The storm outside mirrored the storm of emotions that had been building between us. We spoke softly, voices low, words weaving through stories of past mistakes, hopes, and quiet dreams. I noticed the warmth of her hand as it lingered near mine, the gentle brush of her hair against her shoulder, the way her eyes searched mine as if seeking understanding. I tried to remain cautious, but the closeness was intoxicating. Our first kiss was unplanned. We were sitting on our couch talking about trivial things when the world outside seemed to vanish. One moment we were laughing, and the next her hand was in mine, her lips brushing against mine with hesitant curiosity. It was brief at first, a tentative exploration, but the tension it released was immediate, electrifying. We pulled back, both startled and exhilarated, aware of the boundaries we had just crossed. After that night, our connection deepened. The kisses became longer, the touches more deliberate. Afternoon visits turned into evenings of shared meals, stolen moments, and quiet conversations that lasted until the early hours. I became a fixture in her life, her confidant, her secret companion. Each encounter was shrouded in the thrill of secrecy, the exhilaration of a connection that existed outside the eyes of the world. The air between us was charged, heavy with desire and unspoken longing. I could see the shadows of her past in the way she hesitated sometimes, the way she recoiled when emotions ran too deep. I understood the caution that clung to her, the fear of being hurt again. But there was also a hunger, a craving for intimacy and understanding that I was eager to satisfy. We became adept at finding private spaces, hidden corners, moments where our connection could breathe. Late night walks through deserted streets, quiet drives to the outskirts of town, evenings spent in her apartment with the city asleep outside, all became stages for our growing passion. Guilt was a constant companion, gnawing at the edges of every embrace, every stolen kiss. I thought of the lives we had left behind, of the people who had once trusted us, and yet the pull toward her was irresistible. I was captivated not only by her beauty, but by the fragility and strength she carried, by the raw humanity that shone through even in moments of pain. We danced between desire and restraint, knowing that every moment was borrowed, every touch a dangerous gift. The affair became all-consuming. Days were colored by anticipation, nights by the heat of our closeness. I found myself replaying moments. In my mind, the curve of her smile, the brush of her fingers, the sound of her laughter echoing in my ears long after she had left. We became entwined in ways that went beyond physical desire. Our minds and hearts tethered in a web of intimacy, vulnerability, and unspoken understanding. I noticed changes in myself, a sharper awareness of beauty in the world, a rekindling of desires I had thought dormant, a willingness to take risks for connection. Her presence reminded me that life was more than routine, more than obligations, more than the life I had once known. Yet with every surge of passion came the ache of secrecy, the knowledge that what we shared could not exist openly without consequences. Inevitably, the tension of our clandestine life began to mount. Neighbors noticed longer visits. Friends asked questions I could barely answer. The risk of exposure became real, and with it, the urgency of every stolen moment intensified. We became experts in subtlety, in the art of hidden glances and careful timing, but the danger only made our connection feel more vital, more alive. Eventually, a confrontation with reality became unavoidable. Circumstances shifted, obligations pressed in, and the world outside our private bubble demanded attention. We met one final time, a quiet evening under the dim glow of street lamps. The city hushed around us. Our hands intertwined, our foreheads pressed together, and we kissed with the knowledge that this chapter was ending. There were no angry words, no recriminations, only a shared understanding that some passions are too consuming to exist in the light of everyday life. In the weeks and months that followed, life returned to a semblance of normalcy. She continued to settle into her new home. I maintained my routines, and the world carried on. Yet in the quiet moments, when the city slept and the streets were empty, I remembered her, the warmth of her hand, the intensity of her gaze, the way our hearts had found each other in a place that neither of us had expected. That connection, impossible and forbidden, remained a hidden flame, a reminder of love, desire, an intimacy that could not be forgotten, shaping who I had become and what I was capable of feeling. Even years later, when I walked past that street, when I caught the glimmer of light in a window at dusk, I could feel the echo of her presence, the memory of nights spent together in secrecy, and the undeniable truth that some connections, once formed, never truly fade. They live on, quietly, eternally, in the spaces between memory and longing, in the ache of what could have been, and in the secret, thrilling knowledge of a love that was ours alone. The days after our first real kiss blurred into a dizzying rhythm. Every encounter, every moment we shared, was heightened by the knowledge that it was forbidden, that the rest of the world had no idea what was happening across the street. We developed routines almost subconsciously. She would wave from her window when she saw me tending the garden, a small signal that we both recognized and cherished. I would leave a book or a small gift at her doorstep, a silent message of attention and affection. These gestures, though subtle, became the lifeblood of our clandestine connection. One evening, she invited me over under the guise of wanting help arranging furniture. I arrived to find her apartment bathed in the soft glow of lamps, the city lights filtering through sheer curtains. She poured wine for both of us, and we sat, on the floor, legs brushing as we tried to find the perfect spot for a shelf. Our laughter filled the room, warm and intimate, and eventually her hand found mine. Holding it as naturally as if it had always belonged there, I felt the familiar rush of heat, that dangerous cocktail of desire and longing that had become our constant companion. We began to share more than just fleeting touches. Confessions poured out between us, sometimes in whispers, sometimes in bursts of unrestrained honesty. She spoke of sleepless nights filled with memories of her marriage, of the betrayal and disappointment that had left her cautious yet yearning for a genuine connection. I shared my own insecurities, the way I had grown accustomed to routine and quiet, the parts of myself that only came alive when I was with her. In those moments, the outside world ceased to exist. There was only her and me, two souls entangled. In a secret world of understanding and intimacy, the weather turned warmer and we found ourselves outside more often. Evening walks became our private ritual. We wandered through empty streets, hands occasionally brushing, our conversation shifting from lighthearted banter to more intimate reflections on life, love, and the mistakes that had brought us to that point. Sometimes we would pause under the soft glow of street lamps, her head resting against my shoulder, her hand finding mine in a silent assertion of closeness. Every touch, every glance, every quiet word deepened the tension and the connection between us. The thrill of secrecy was intoxicating. One night, she suggested we visit an old, unused park on the outskirts of town, a place where few ventured. After dark, the path was lined with overgrown bush, and the swings creaked gently in the breeze. We walked slowly, savoring the sense of solitude, and eventually I pulled her close, feeling her warmth against me. Our kiss that night was slow, deliberate, and electric, a merging of longing, tenderness, and the thrill of being unseen. In those stolen moments, the rest of the world faded, leaving only the two of us, suspended in time, even as the intimacy between us deepened. A quiet tension grew. Friends and neighbors began to notice subtle changes, the way we lingered together, the small, knowing glances we exchanged. I became acutely aware of the fragile balance we maintained, the need for caution and discretion in every action. And yet, the more we tried to restrain ourselves, the stronger the pull became. Each encounter was a dangerous blend of desire and self-control, a delicate dance on the edge of exposure. Our connection spilled into unexpected moments. A casual grocery run turned into a shared adventure as we explored unfamiliar aisles together, laughing at minor mishaps, our hands brushing as we reached for the same items. A rainy afternoon led to an impromptu coffee date, the cafe nearly empty, the scent of rain and fresh coffee enveloping us as we lingered over conversation that seemed to stretch for hours. Every interaction, no matter how mundane it appeared, to outsiders, was charged with intimacy and anticipation. Each small gesture a testament to the bond we had formed. The intensity of our affair began to take a toll. Nights were spent in passionate embrace, mornings in quiet reflection, trying to reconcile our feelings with the reality of our separate lives. There were moments of guilt that threatened to suffocate the joy we found in each other's presence, whispers of doubt, the fear of discovery, the knowledge that what we shared could never exist openly. But there was also an undeniable truth. In each other, we had found a connection that went beyond attraction, a deep understanding and acceptance that neither of us had experienced before. Summer brought longer days and warmer nights, and with it, more daring encounters. We would escape to secluded beaches, the ocean a quiet witness to our passion, or drive through winding country roads, windows down, the wind carrying our laughter and whispered confessions. In these moments, the outside world was irrelevant. The only reality that mattered was the closeness between us. The way her hand fit perfectly in mine, the way her voice could calm and ignite me at the same time. I became attuned to her rhythms, the subtle shifts in her expressions, the way her body responded to touch, the quiet signals that conveyed more than words ever could. She, in turn, learned the contours of my heart, the moments when I needed comfort, the fleeting sparks of joy that could be shared in silence. Our affair, though dangerous and forbidden, became a mirror reflecting the truest parts of ourselves. revealing vulnerabilities, desires, and passions we had kept hidden for too long. Eventually, reality intruded. Responsibilities, social obligations, and the ever-present risk of exposure forced us to confront the inevitable. We met one evening in the soft glow of a city park, the air warm with the last breaths of summer. Hands intertwined, foreheads pressed. Together, we shared a long, lingering kiss, savoring the finality of the moment and the depth of our feelings. There were no angry words, no accusations, only the shared understanding that our love, while intense and transformative, could not survive in the light of ordinary life. After that night, we retreated into our separate worlds. She continued to rebuild her life after the divorce, and I returned to mine, carrying with me the indelible mark of what we had shared. Yet, in the quiet moments when the world seemed to pause, I could feel her presence, a gentle brush of memory, a warmth that lingered, a reminder of the connection that had awakened a part of me I had long thought dormant. Years later, walking past her street, hearing a familiar phrase, or catching a fleeting glimpse of someone who reminded me of her, the memory still strikes with the same intensity. The stolen afternoons, whispered confessions, and quiet nights we shared remain a part of me, a testament to the power of forbidden connection and the ways in which love can transform even the most ordinary lives. Even now, long after the world moved on, I can remember the warmth of her hand in mine, the intensity of her gaze, and the way she made me feel understood in ways no one else ever could. She had been my neighbor, yes, but she had become so much more a mirror, a confidant, a secret fire that would burn quietly in my memory forever. The weeks that followed our last stolen kiss were strange and heavy, each day tinged with memory and longing. I found myself glancing toward her apartment almost instinctively, scanning the windows for a flicker of movement, a shadow, a hint that she was there. The routine of our former encounters left an emptiness I couldn't quite fill, a void that pulsed beneath my normal days with the quiet ache of absence. I would catch myself reaching for my phone to text her, to hear her voice or see her name on the screen, and then remember that we had chosen distance, that the moments we had shared belonged to the past now, as intoxicating as they had been. Yet, distance did not dull the intensity of what we had experienced. I carried her with me in small ways. The way she laughed at absurd things, the tilt of her head when she was thinking, the warmth of her fingers pressed against mine in those fleeting touches. Each memory was vivid, unshakable, and impossible to ignore. Even mundane activities, making dinner, walking to the store, attending meetings, were colored by recollections of her presence, lingering like the faint scent of a perfume that would not fade. One evening, unable to resist the pull, I found myself walking past her apartment. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement from a recent rain, and the world felt hushed, almost conspiratorial. I paused, half expecting her to appear, half wishing she wouldn't, and then I saw a light in her window. For a moment, my heart leapt, and then I realized she was alone, moving around quietly, completely unaware of my gaze. I lingered only for a moment, reluctant to intrude, and then continued walking, feeling the ache of longing tighten around my chest. Our paths eventually crossed again in more mundane circumstances, as if the universe was unwilling to let us slip entirely out of each other's lives. She appeared at a local grocery store one rainy afternoon, her hair damp from the storm, cheeks flushed from the chill. I froze, and she paused too, eyes widening in recognition. There was a heartbeat of hesitation, a silent acknowledgement of everything we had shared and the space that now existed between us. Then she smiled, a small, knowing smile, and in that instant, the years of distance collapsed. We exchanged polite words, casual conversation that masked the layers of memory and desire lying just beneath the surface. Yet every glance, every laugh, every inflection carried the weight of what had once been, a secret language we both still understood perfectly. She invited me in, almost casually, under the pretense of dropping off a borrowed book or returning something I had left behind. The apartment smelled faintly of lavender and old paper, and the familiar softness of the lamps made the space feel both intimate and safe. We talked for hours that day, voices low, fingers occasionally brushing in ways that made my chest tighten. There was a deliberate restraint now, a mutual understanding that what we shared was dangerous to repeat fully, yet neither of us could resist testing the boundaries. A hand lingered a moment too long, a gaze held a beat too long, and a thrill surged once again, mingled with guilt and longing. Our renewed connection was not reckless, but it was charged. Every encounter became a careful balance of closeness and self-control. We learned to meet in quiet corners and cafes closing for the evening or during early morning walks when few others were around. Each time we were together, the world outside fell away. The city, the neighbors, the past and present, everything faded except for the two of us, the shared understanding of our intertwined lives. The intensity of our connection, tempered by restraint, made every word, every touch, every glance feel like a profound act of intimacy. As the months passed, we discovered new depths in our bond. We began sharing dreams and fears that had been carefully hidden for years. She spoke of the quiet dread she sometimes felt after the divorce, of the lonely nights spent questioning her choices and her ability to trust. I shared my own insecurities, the way I had learned to hold myself together in public while longing for someone who truly saw me. Our conversations became a sanctuary, a place where neither of us needed to perform, where vulnerability was met with understanding rather than judgment. We also began to remember the lighter moments of our past intimacy. The rainy walks, the stolen kisses in shadowed corners, the quiet evenings in her apartment, the soft laughter and whispered confessions. Each recollection was a spark, a reminder of the intensity we had shared, a proof of a connection that had reshaped the way we understood love and desire. These memories were bittersweet, carrying both joy and the ache of what could not fully exist in the present. I noticed that my feelings for her were no longer just about desire. They had transformed into something deeper, something more permanent. It was a profound appreciation of her mind, her heart, her resilience. I found myself admiring her strength in rebuilding her life, her courage in facing loneliness and heartbreak, and the way she could still laugh despite the weight of her past. Every encounter, even those brief and fleeting, reinforced the realization that our connection was about more than physical attraction. It was a rare alignment of hearts and minds that neither of us could replicate elsewhere. We gradually began to navigate a careful friendship, a bridge between the passion of the past and the responsibilities of the present. Lunches became opportunities to talk about life and work, to support each other without crossing the line that had once threatened everything. Walks in the park allowed for quiet companionship, shared laughter, and the occasional touch that was innocent yet meaningful. We learned to live with the memory of our affair without letting it dictate the entirety of our interactions. Though the undercurrent of desire was always present, subtle but undeniable, years passed and life moved forward. She found joy in her work, friendships deepened, and I continued to cultivate my own path. Yet the imprint of our time together remained indelible. Every so often, a particular song, a smell, a street corner would bring her to mind, and I would feel a mixture of longing, nostalgia, and gratitude for what we had shared. The love we had experienced, though secret and fleeting, had awakened parts of us that would remain alive forever, a reminder that even forbidden connections could transform and illuminate the course of a life, even decades later. I could recall the small details with startling clarity, the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the softness of her hands in mine, the thrill of knowing we were caught in something both dangerous and beautiful. She had moved next door after her divorce, and though she had become more than a neighbor, more than a fleeting passion, she had also become a permanent presence in the quiet corners of my heart, a memory I would carry forever. Our story was not about betrayal or scandal, but about understanding, intimacy, and the rare connection that defies time and circumstance. It was a love that existed in shadows and in whispers, a love that taught me the meaning of closeness, the value of trust, and the enduring power of human connection. Though life had moved us into separate worlds, the bond we shared remained, an invisible thread connecting us in ways words could never fully capture.